Prioritization.
Hi, everyone. So our next session is the Development and Prioritization Subteam. Ask Us Anything. And so we are joined by Bree McLaughlin. She, her, hers is the Digital Collections Librarian at Indiana University. She has managed the creation and maintenance of digital, archival, and special collections records since 2020. Her experience includes data migration, digital accessibility, and inclusive description best practices. We are also joined by Matthew Strauss, he, him, his, is the director of the Dietrich Library and Archives of the Heinz History Center, where he oversees the acquisition, description, digitization, and preservation of the organization's library and archival collection. Matt joined the History Center in 2008 to manage the organization's first film project. Since then, Matt has directed archival processing and digitization initiatives funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, and the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. And Dalton Alves is him is the Digital Services Manager for George Washington University Libraries. He manages the digitization of archival and specialized collections and supports archivists in collecting and preserving born digital and web records. With experience in libraries, museums, and archives, his work focuses on making cultural heritage collections more open and accessible to all. And so, in this session, these representatives from the Development and Prioritization Subteam will give a brief overview of the subteam's work before transitioning into an open discussion. We will come prepared with answers to some frequently asked questions, but we'll dedicate the majority of the session to the audience. The session will give attendees a better understanding of how the subteam makes decisions and how users can engage with the process. All right, I'm going to pass that over to our subteam members.
All right, well, thanks for the introduction. We're glad that so many folks have joined us today to hear a little bit about the Development and Prioritization Subteam. As has been mentioned, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the work that we do, but the primary goal here is to hear your questions, so there'll be ample time for us to have a Q&A session today. So as we get started here, I'll start things off. So first and foremost, the Development and Prioritization Subteam, or DevPri for short, is the team that is evaluating all of the feature requests and bug reports that are being submitted by users of ArchivesSpace. So feature requests are generally requests from the community to enhance the current capabilities of ArchivesSpace. And bug reports are reports that something is not behaving the way it should be in ArchivesSpace. So we are comprised of members from both the User Advisory Council and the Technical Advisory Council. Members of these councils serve 3-year terms and are appointed to subteams when they join. So for the most part, our team members are serving 3-year terms on DevPri. And we're currently at about 10 members. And you can see all the different folks listed there on the slide. We also do work in conjunction with the ArchivesSpace team. So at our monthly meetings, we are joined by Christine DeBella, the ArchivesSpace Senior Program Manager, Dimios Demopoulos, Technical Lead, and Donald Smith, Developer. And the Archives folks are there to join the call to basically give some context to ArchivesSpace and the development work that has happened or is being planned to happen, to talk a little bit about the technical implications of making some of these changes, and whether or not the tickets that we're reviewing have enough information in them for development to happen. In terms of actually kind of weighing in on whether or not a ticket should move forward, that's pretty much the DevPri team itself making that call. And so, like I mentioned, we are meeting monthly for 90 minutes. And in that time, we generally get to about 10 to 15 tickets, depending on the complexity and the length of the resulting conversation that occurs. And
Sorry, that's me. Hi, this is Bree. So when DevPry is taking a look at these tickets, there are some general questions that we are all asking ourselves about the ticket before we come together to talk about it each month. Um, so the first question, and before anything, first, there are no stupid questions and no stupid tickets. Please create all the tickets. These are just some details that cover the prioritization part of DevPry. But the first question, is there enough information to understand the request? So for example, if a ticket said simply, I want it to be easier to export data, that wouldn't tell us a lot of important details like what kind of data and what format are you hoping to export data. The more data, the better, essentially. Second, can the bug, if it's a bug report, be reproduced? Whenever we are assigned a bug report ticket, step one is to try to replicate the bug in the ArchivesSpace test server, which is the most recent version of ArchivesSpace. If we can't reproduce that behavior described in the ticket, then there are follow-up inquiries like, is the reporter using the same version of ArchivesSpace? Knowing the steps taken by a reporter to encounter a bug is the easiest way to answer this part. Next, is there an existing workaround? It's important to know if there is an existing workaround for the problem described by the reporter. An existing workaround doesn't automatically preclude a request from being passed for development, but it may have less priority. Next, is the feature broadly applicable? It's helpful to consider if the feature requested by a reporter is something that would impact the ArchivesSpace community broadly. When I first started using ArchivesSpace about 5 years ago, I think I requested a feature that was understandably rejected, and it was something like, could I generate a report of all extent type controlled values separated by which repository used them and their archival objects? For some context, my institution has 32 repositories, and at that point, I was undertaking a massive extent type cleanup project. So the feature request would have been very helpful to me, but probably wouldn't have been helpful to many other users who likely weren't encountering the same use case. And last, is the feature a part of the ArchivesSpace roadmap? If you are familiar with the roadmap, ArchivesSpace has a roadmap that I've linked in the slides, and it describes the overarching short and long-term development goals. If a feature request is related to a goal on the roadmap, assuming it isn't a duplicate, then we will likely pass it for development. And like I said, none of this is meant to discourage you from submitting a feature request. You never know how many people want the same functionality that you're describing. The investigation is just how DevPry approaches feature requests and bug reports within an open source application with limited time and resources.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So after we've assessed the ticket, there's four outcomes that we can assign to it. And I think really the big thing here is do we have enough information? Kind of like Bree was discussing, a lot of the kind of initial discussion is about the scope of the ticket and what we need to pass it on. We want to be able to pass it on to the ArchivesSpace developers where they have all of the info that they need to start development on the bug fix or the feature enhancement or the new feature. So after DevPry has looked at the ticket and either reproduced the bug or understood the scope of the feature request, right? We generally assess the entirety of the information within the ticket. And if we feel like there's enough information for the ArchivesSpace development team to start, we will select that first ready for implementation outcome. Often, though, our discussion will surface that we might need some more information. So that's where we will select the second option there, the awaiting more information. So this might be for a bug request. This might be we weren't able to reproduce the bug, so we might toggle it to this and then reach out to the original author of the ticket, to learn more about kind of their local environment that they're working in, or to get better steps to help us reproduce the bug. But for feature requests and for bug tickets as well, we'll also reach out to the larger ArchivesSpace community. And most recently, we've been doing this via the ArchivesSpace mailing list or listserv. And this is particularly relevant for feature requests where as Matt and Bree already mentioned, right, we're trying to assess how relevant the feature request is to the larger community. So we want to know about specific use cases that might fall under this feature request, and the general utility of the potential feature request to the community. So that's where we'll kind of turn it over to the community, and we try to get additional feedback on the ticket in the form of comments on the ticket in Jira. And then that'll allow us to either discuss the ticket again at our next meeting or a future meeting, or just toggle it right over to one of the other statuses, depending on the information that we get. So the final two ticket outcomes are both related to a closed ticket. So this is where we have decided not to move it on to the ArchivesSpace development team. And one reason to close a ticket might be that the ticket is either a duplication of a bug report, so it's reporting a same bug that's already been reported. And in that case, we'll close the ticket and we'll reference the other ticket that's related to the bug. And this happens, we, like Bree was saying, we encourage everyone to submit tickets, and searching through Jira to try to figure out if something has already been reported can be a little bit difficult. So that's where we'll cross-reference those tickets. And then the final status is closed, will not do. And this is where we've discussed the ticket, either the bug or the feature request. And if it's a bug, we have probably decided that it's not a bug, and it's desired behavior or something like that. Or if it's a feature request, we might have decided that it's slightly out of scope, or it's something that we're not comfortable passing on to the development team. But yeah, those are the four outcomes for tickets, and we're happy to talk more about that.
All right, so we're going to start off with some frequently asked questions that we've prepared to get the Q&A portion going. But this is just a portion of what could be asked of us. But I'll take the first two here. How do I submit a Jira ticket? And do I need to be an ArchivesSpace member to make a feature request or to report a bug? So you do not need to be an ArchivesSpace member to do this. What you will need is an account with Atlassian. That is what the service that hosts the Confluence implementation for ArchivesSpace, where you'll find a lot of documentation of ArchivesSpace. This will also give you access to Jira, which is the ticketing platform that ArchivesSpace uses. So that's what you'll need to do. And before you make that, you create your own ticket, there's just some helpful things to do beforehand, and some of this has been mentioned before, but you'll probably want to make sure that you're using the current version of ArchivesSpace. If you're not sure that your own institution is running that, you can log into the ArchivesSpace sandbox, which is running the latest release. and make sure that the feature request is not already been implemented or the bug hasn't already been fixed. When you open up a ticket, you will be prompted to fill in certain bits of information. You've heard a bit about today about how important that having enough information is for DevPri to properly evaluate the request and for development to put it into action. So there's going to be a template in those tickets that will prompt you for structuring your request a certain way that is really beneficial to us.
Yeah, and I can take the third question here, which is how do I get involved or help? I think there's two general kind of tracks that I see to get involved in this process. And the first one is just be involved with the tickets when DevPri reaches out to the community for feedback. If you have feedback, definitely comment on that Jira ticket if you're able, or follow up via email with one of the DevPri members, and they can post on your behalf. So much of this process is dependent on understanding, the community needs and how everyone else in this community kind of fits into the larger development of a space. So that's one way to get involved. And then the other way is to actually serve on the user advisory council or the technical advisory committee. And both of those, and I believe the nomination process for those is often in like May. So it's probably coming up soon. And both of those would provide opportunity to engage in this process, either through appointment on DevPri or just through other kind of cross-council activities.
And I can take the last two questions. So for what reasons might a ticket be rejected? And I touched on some of these reasons during the ticket investigation slide, but another big reason would be if the ticket was a duplicate. There are many feature requests and bug features in the ArchivesSpace Jira board, and duplicates are bound to happen. And as Dalton mentioned, we use the status closed duplicate in that case. So if that's what you see on your ticket, that's what's happening there. Another reason is if we think local documentation would resolve an issue. For example, if a feature request was to set a default for language of description, we would likely recommend that the user document within their own institution how to set preferences within their own repository instead of enacting an application-wide default. Lastly, what happens if I disagree with DevPri's decision? If you disagree with our decision, you're welcome to create another ticket. If you know any other ArchivesSpace users who would support your ticket, invite them to watch, like, and/or comment on the ticket so we can know there is a wider community desire for what you've reported. You're also welcome to comment asking for more details. Development is always changing, so it's entirely possible that something that's reported before may be more relevant for a future release than when you first reported it. Okay, so now that we've gotten the most common questions out of the way, we'd like to open the floor to the audience for questions. So please send any questions through the Q&A, and we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, please do drop any questions you have for DevPri in the chat. We do already have one, and you touched on this a little bit at the end, but Lee asked, when a feature request is closed and not accepted for prioritization, what is the likelihood that one could resubmit the request in the much later future when the need persists and can possibly be revisited? Or maybe do you have some tips for if a ticket is closed, if you want to resubmit, what are some things you could do to make it be maybe more successful the second time around?
I can add on a little bit to that last point I was talking about. If anyone has created a ticket lately, you will see the amazing work that Themios has been doing creating this template in the Jira ticket form. And that will prompt you to enter in a lot of very useful information, like steps to reproduce. And just the more information that you can give us, the more that we are able to test and discuss. And it just leaves less room for guessing. That's one big thing. I don't, Matt or Dalton, if you have anything else that you're thinking of.
Yeah, I could just jump in and say when we do evaluate a ticket, a member of DevPry will add a comment to the ticket, kind of indicating what status it's being changed to. And at that point, if there's questions you might have about our decision, typically we don't go too much into why we did that, but feel free to reach out and to get more information about why we decided to close the ticket. But in general, I think it's great to consider resubmitting a ticket if you're continuing to have a need for a feature. And one of the other things that we're looking at is the amount of people we think would be finding this feature useful. So if you can, perhaps when you resubmit, you also post something to the email list asking folks if they're also interested in this feature, and if so, can they comment on the new ticket, or can they add their support to the ticket? Because that's something that we definitely look at a lot when we're considering these tickets before us, how much support there already is in the community for it.
I could just add one final thing, and that might be just to kind of keep your eyes or keep aware of the ArchivesSpace roadmap. And if the roadmap changes in the future and it kind of aligns with maybe a past ticket that you submitted that didn't work out, having it be more adjacent to where the roadmap is going might give DevPry, different thoughts in the future about a similar ticket that you had submitted that got turned down.
Thank you all. Those are really great points. And to Matthew's point about amplifying a ticket that you submit in the listserv, that's great. Right, the more community consensus and use cases, the better. But also, if you didn't write the ticket, but you see one and you're thinking, oh, I wish there was movement on this, voice that in the ticket, give your use cases. And definitely, like Bree said, the addition of the behavior scenarios and the templates that are now available and how to request a new feature, those have been really great. I know that they have upped my ticket writing game, so I definitely recommend checking out the link that Jamie shared in the chat. Jamie's been sharing tons of good resources in the chat on how to make a feature request. Crystal says that she has 2 open tickets. Could you go back to the slide on ticket statuses? If I see one ticket has a pass and is ready for implementation, does that mean I should expect to see it in a new release soon?
I can take this. This has come up before, as noting the terminology used is not always easily understood. But yes, if you see a comment saying that the ticket has passed, that means that DevPry has approved the ticket. And when the status changed to ready for implementation, it means that DevPry is recommending that ticket for implementation. The other part to your question, how soon should I expect to see it in a new release, really varies. It's not likely to be immediate. There's a backlog of tickets that have been passed and are waiting to be implemented. But as has been mentioned, things might get prioritized if they are connected to some of the areas outlined in the ArchivesSpace roadmap.
Thanks. And building on this, Dan asks, does DevPry consider the number of watchers and or the thumbs up that a ticket has in their consideration, like a vote?
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the most useful ways that you as an ArchivesSpace member can support where you want to see development go. So I highly recommend, even if you're not creating tickets yourself, or if you don't feel comfortable doing so, take a look at what tickets are currently being reviewed that are awaiting prioritization. And you can see it as kind of voting for how you want ArchivesSpace to develop. But yes, we definitely look at that. So yes, please do.
Thanks. Joanne, following up on Crystal's question, if something is assigned into a sprint but says ready for implementation, does that mean it's being actively worked on?
I believe the answer is yes to that. I see Christine is typing an answer to it, so this might be a Christine question. But I believe the answer is yes. Christine, let me know if that is incorrect.
Can anyone else hear Christine? I see she's unmuted, but I can't hear her.
I can't hear her either.
Okay, can people hear me
There
now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I was listening without my headset on. Okay, so this is Christine Devell. I'm the Senior Program Manager for ArchivesSpace. So one of the things that I do is sort of work on sort of organizing development and putting together sort of what people want, what tickets have been passed, putting them together with the development resources that we have. So in terms of the question of when can you tell something is being worked on, we do our development in sprints frequently. So that would be groups of tickets being worked on in a certain time limited period. We usually do 3-week sprints, but sometimes longer. So when something gets moved into a sprint, that means that it is intended to be worked on in the near term. When it is actively being worked on, we have a development status called development started. That would be sort of the next step on its journey. And then you'll also see the status updated when a pull request, like when the actual development has happened on it and it's ready to be reviewed. And then we also have a status called ready for testing. And that means like it's actually gone in to the main branch of code of the application, and it's up on our testing server so people can test it, including our testing subteam. If something hasn't made it into a sprint yet, that means usually that it's not being actively worked on. But if you do see the status in general, whether or not it's in a sprint, change to development started, and you see that a specific developer has been assigned to it, that means that it's moving along further.
Thank you. And Michelle asked, is this those statuses, are they explicitly listed anywhere? Is there anywhere we can see that in the documentation? And I don't know the answer.
So we do have some various resources on our wiki that have lots of things related to development, including what the statuses are. So I'll grab the link for that, and I'll grab the link for one big master thing that is everything related to development. And then also specifically what the statuses mean. I'll put that in the chat here.
Okay, cool. The one link to rule them all. That was really dorky. Any other questions? Please do drop them into the Q&A.
While we're waiting for more questions to come in, I want to mention two things. One, I have this last slide of some helpful resources, a lot of links that will probably answer some additional questions that come up to, like how to submit a bug report. What is the life cycle of a ticket? But I also have, or we also have some other not as frequently asked questions that we can answer as well. I know a big one that I had before I joined DevPri was, do you need to have advanced technical skills and knowledge of ArchivesSpace to participate in DevPri? Definitely not. Any knowledge is helpful, but I think that in our sub team, we have a variety of specialties and people who know different areas of the application. For example, I know nothing about the API, but I know who to assign or who would know how to answer questions about the API. So general answer, no, you don't have to be an expert or have advanced skills to join DevPri.
And just to add on to that, if you are interested in increasing your your skills and knowledge of ArchivesSpace, consider volunteering for council and potentially getting on DevPri, because I feel like my knowledge of ArchivesSpace has just grown so much by serving on this sub team. I think we all use ArchivesSpace at our organizations in certain ways, and there's certain ways you're familiar with it and certain ways you're not. And fielding these requests has really opened my eyes to what ArchivesSpace can currently do that I didn't know about, and its potential for growing and changing and getting better. So I've really enjoyed my time on DevPri.
Yeah, and I can second or third that. It is a really good learning experience. I've only been on DevPri for less than a year now, and just through handling, different tickets, I've got to interact with different features of ArchivesSpace that I might not use in my everyday work because of the type of work I do, but also just because of kind of as Matthew was saying, due to like how local implementations of ArchivesSpace are all a little bit different. So it's definitely been a good learning experience to learn more about the functionality of the program, but also how other folks are using it.
I also want to add that, when we're doing onboarding of new folks for DevPri for a term, we do ask, like, what areas of ArchivesSpace are you familiar with? Do you feel are your strengths? So the lead can assign tickets that might be within your strengths or something like that. And if you were assigned something that is out of your wheelhouse or you don't feel comfortable investigating, we can assign you something else. So yeah, it's a very welcoming environment. I also have learned a lot since joining DevPri. I've also served on testing, and doing both of those sub teams is just like a crash course in ArchivesSpace. You become an expert very fast.
Paul asked kind of a fun question. Thanks for all your work. I'm wondering which features requested you individually are excited about seeing in the foreseeable future.
I can talk about a ticket that's been hanging around a little bit that was submitted about enhancing audit functionality in ArchivesSpace. This is a ticket that was submitted a number of years ago and has been discussed a bit. And last term, our former lead, Matthew Neely, he brought it back up again. And the initial request was very kind of minimal. I can put the original ticket in the chat here that folks can take a look at. And in our discussion of this ticket, we're thinking of expanding the scope of it a bit to really be a robust audit functionality that would let ArchivesSpace users know who is editing records in ArchivesSpace, what is being changed, when that change happened. So Matthew brought this up last year, and at that time we decided we'd love to get some greater feedback into this, because our team is 10 people. That's a very small percentage of the ArchivesSpace community at large. So this is a ticket we sent out to the email list to get some additional feedback on. And this is also an example of a ticket that it's going to, we've decided to chunk it out into different components, because it can be a bit more extensive than what the original ticket has described. So we've been working with developers on ArchivesSpace to make sure that the new tickets we're putting in are actionable, that have enough information in them to move forward. So that's one that I think would be great to see implemented, and it is one that is on a stage of the ArchivesSpace roadmap.
I'm trying to think of some specific tickets, because the ones that I typically get excited about are not like these big new features. They're just like little things that are just kind of annoying in ArchivesSpace that you don't think about until somebody makes a ticket about them. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Thanks, y'all. And Bree, those little annoying things go a long way, that's for sure. In making ArchivesSpace more friendly. And Joshua Shaw posted into the chat a link to a plugin that has some audit feature functionality. It's a cool plugin. So if people want to check that out in relation to what Matthew was talking about, it is cool.
There is one ticket that you all may have seen in an email from me last year when I was trying to get community feedback for, which was the ability to add or to link archival objects to accession records through the spreadsheet importer. At the time, DevPry didn't have strong feelings, or we didn't have like many use cases represented between us. So that's why we reached out to the greater ArchivesSpace user community. And I was quickly met with a lot of very enthusiastic, yes, please do that, from both the ArchivesSpace community and also within my institution. I had sent out an email to all of the collection managers at Indiana University. And I don't create accession records myself, so I don't think I realized how excited people would be about the prospect of being able to link archival objects to accession records. But I guess that is an example of community feedback, leading development, but also just something that people are excited about that is in the future.
Thanks, Bree. Valerie has a question. And before I ask the question, it's about like if a ticket exists or not. If you're ever wondering, has someone already submitted this ticket? Has somebody already submitted this bug report? You can always go to development.archivespace.org and search for the ticket, or do a keyword search to see if that bug report or ticket has already been submitted. And if it hasn't, please do, especially for bugs, do make a report of that. If it does already exist and you're like, yes, score, I really care about this, make sure that you comment on the ticket to amplify the ticket as well. That does help DevPry. Valerie is asking about a specific ticket or a specific feature. Is there currently, to your knowledge, a feature or ticket that allows an audit of location change to be able to track collections usage, assuming locations are being updated when boxes are used or moved around? I'm not seeing anybody unmute. Oh, Bree, did you want to answer it? I would stab at it.
I can't think of a specific ticket that would be talking about this issue. I actually have a ticket assigned to me this month that has to do with just how temporary locations are handled. But I can't think of anything quite like that. And yes, Valerie's on. Feel free to ask for that feature in a Jira ticket. That would be great.
If you're asking more specifically about something like circulation management, keep in mind ArchivesSpace isn't like a circulation management system, but it does integrate with a lot of systems. So if you're thinking of one specifically, you could also drop that into the chat. Lee also says in the chat that she's using events to track that. So maybe that's a conversation that could happen in the chat. And Sarit says, I think there was a thread, I'm assuming on the listserv, about managing temporary locations. And I know Sarit has feelings about locations too. So this is a conversation that could definitely go places.
I can I'll put my fellow team members on the spot and and ask a question of them that I'm curious about, and that is what have you learned while serving on DevPry, and are you using ArchivesSpace differently with what you've learned by serving on the subteam?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this. I think that's a really good question. I wouldn't even say that like what I've learned is limited to tickets that I've personally handled. Just through seeing the tickets that other DevPry members bring to the meeting, there's definitely a lot of opportunity to just learn about other areas of ArchivesSpace that you might not have encountered. I think it gives me like general awareness of what others are doing. And I think, I see a lot being done with the bulk import kind of spreadsheet and the different importers. And we've handled a lot of tickets recently about kind of reusing data, like transferring data from one record to another, which definitely kind of all like the importers and these bulk transfer kind of things, they seem to all kind of indicate a desire to like reuse data to be more effective in your data entry. So that hasn't necessarily gotten back to my practices yet, but it does give me some ideas about how to kind of structure internal workflows to kind of better leverage some of these time-saving tools so that we're not inputting data twice when it doesn't need to be. So I think it has kind of widened my eyes, but I just haven't had enough time to really sit down and kind of rethink some of these workflows.
Yeah, selfishly, one of the big benefits to my life since serving on DevPry is that I have much more solid answers to questions from collection managers and other stakeholders in my institution. If they're asking me like, why hasn't X changed or something like that, I can give a better answer of like, well, actually, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support for this, or here's another way that you could achieve the same or do the same task. I have a lot, it's a lot easier to communicate where ArchivesSpace is going development wise. I've learned a lot while serving on DevPry. I already touched on like a lot of like the technical things, but I think also just hearing how others are using ArchivesSpace, both the reporters and the other members of DevPri. I am the point of contact at my institution and have been since we migrated to ArchivesSpace. So if you're like me in that situation, like you have to be the expert on ArchivesSpace. And so the way that collection managers or any of the users at your institution are using ArchivesSpace are kind of up to your imagination. So being able to see how other folks are using ArchivesSpace is really helpful for helping the people at your institution use ArchivesSpace, or even just improving how you use the application.
I'll echo all of that. I was struck when I joined this sub-team and started to do this work. I was struck by how limited our organization's use of ArchivesSpace was, and we're just not using a lot of the different modules like collection management and assessments, and this has really opened my eyes, and then sharing this information with my colleagues, it's really starting to get us thinking about taking full advantage of some of the other modules that we're just kind of glancing over and not really exploring. So that it's been a real educational experience.
Thank you all. That was a good question, and those were good answers. We don't have any other questions in the Q&A, so we may go ahead and start to wrap up here. But thank you so much for this overview. It's always helpful, I think, to see how this work gets done and to be reminded that this is a community effort. And if you want to see the application grow and change, we all have a responsibility to that. So thank you so much. This was really great. And do use those links that were provided to submit tickets, to submit bug reports, and to garner support for those tickets. That is the end of our forum for today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up now. I know that Jamie